No, I get it.
Exactly.
And I want to get into talking about, because not everyone is familiar with the difference between generative AI, which we know, like, from the agents, the bots like ChatGPT, and Agentic, because it's like another level above. But for that, another comment I hear a lot from One Accord business owners is, should people, businesses, even corporations be concerned with AI replacing people? And I'm thinking of, the social media channels. I'm thinking of Amazon. It's like every other day, they're laying off 4 and 5 digits of staff.
So that we don't go down that rabbit hole too far, I'll leave you with some YouTube references.
Okay.
That really, two of the four renowned AI experts recently had a conversation about where AI is going and how generative AI, where it's also going. And I think everybody is realizing to some degree that it's just not living up to the hype of what they expected it to do.
Welcome to the Value Factory Podcast, brought to you by One Accord. We're all about helping businesses thrive and grow through leadership, strategy, and meaningful impact. Now, whether you're a seasoned executive or just starting out, our goal is to provide insights and inspiration to help you navigate your journey. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome to the next episode in our Value Factory podcast, presented by One Accord. We have a great topic and a great guest, whom I will introduce in just a moment here. I am your host, Andrew Ballard, and we've got a great topic. We're going to talk today about how agentic AI and edge computing can be the answer to give SMBs, small to medium-sized businesses, really the same AI advantage that Fortune 500s have. And we just we have a subject matter expert here, Mark Kurtz. Is that right?
That's right.
Awesome.
That's right.
I have our audience knows that I have dyslexia, and sometimes it rears its ugly head. So I have met Mike a couple of times, and he has Mark. Call me Frank, and then we'll be even. Oh, yeah. Hey Bob, how you doing?
That's all right.
Yeah, this is Mike calling you Bob. Oh,
we'll change out a couple different characters as we go.
That'll be fun. The audience, there's going to be a quiz at the end of this.
That's right.
So
bring your number 2 pencil.
Fill in your little IBM card. I'm dating myself. Anyway, Mark has a fascinating background in entertainment and technology, kind of intersecting emerging technologies, starting in the visual effects production business, worked with Amblin Entertainment, which I had never heard of. But the person that he worked for, I think I've heard of once or twice, a very, very little known person in Hollywood called Steven Spielberg. In fact, didn't you do like 3 major motion pictures, Lost World, Jurassic Park, the historic Amistad, and Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, I was very fortunate in my career, first off, to get the opportunity to work at such a great studio like Amblin.
Yeah,
Entertainment. But Steven had just come off his Oscar win for Schindler's List. And it was about early 95 when I got the opportunity. And so the timing was just right that, in short here, I got a chance to work on the Lost World Jurassic Park sequel, which was highly anticipated back then.
Oh, I remember.
But then Steven decided that he wanted to go back to back films, because in that time span, he had gotten an incredible script for Amistad, which he produced with Debbie Allen. And then Saving Private Ryan came in. It was sort of like this flow of these scripts that came in. And then Steven just said, we're going to go back to back. And so that really that's sort of like, put your army together and go into battle, 3 different battles. You kind of
3 different fronts.
That's right. 3 different fronts. And, just be on your toes, be prepared, and show up, do good at your job, do well at your job.
Right.
And it gets reflected. And so I happened to be in the art department, and I was working with the storyboards, and I decided I was going to color code them in a way that would help production.
Wasn't that new in the industry?
Well, visual effects was just kind of getting its first stride.
I meant the color coding of the
No,
story.
the color coding, yes, something that, I graduated with a finance degree. So my process had to come out
Analytical.
somehow,
Right.
And so, so what I did is I realized, even for myself, it was really something to do for myself at first, where I was dealing with thousands of pages of storyboards. And then I had to create a book for each department. And there was roughly 50 departments for that film.
Goodness.
And each book carries roughly almost 300 pages. So do the math. And then I had to hand stamp all of them to make sure they were watermarked correctly, just to keep everything under a tight lid. But the point here is that I color coded all of them. And when it came time to wrap up shooting and he was ramping up Amistad and had to go to set, they were all like, well, who's going to, Steve's department is already overwhelmed with 3 productions. We did the the color coding. I mean, that kid, because what ended up happening is starting to color code it for every single department. And it became a very handy thing because I separated out what was being shot practically, live action with puppeteer, or if it was live action with visual effects.
Probably a lot of puppeteering for Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So I know that isn't our topic, but
That's right.
Learning about your background, it's so fascinating that you were working at such a high level. Was Steven a difficult person to work for?
No, absolutely not. He was.
He's a blooming genius.
It's the antithesis of that. In fact, like Steven demands your input. He wants your input.
Great culture.
Because he has this ability to riff off of everyone's ideas. And so it becomes this incredible environment of collaboration. And that's why so many people come back and want to work for him, multiple times. And he keeps a very tight crew in a lot of his core departments. So yeah, he's an incredible collaborator that way. Just as mine works.
What a treat. And I'm going to continue with some more of your bio because I really want to understand the transition from the high level that you were at with visual elements and art and everything that you did there and how that transcended into your agentic AI and edge computing. So Mark continued working with the latest cutting edge technology in commercial visual effects with digital domain and commercialized military grade technology, bridging Huntsville to Hollywood. I'm guessing Huntsville is a reference to the military, Hollywood visual.
Yeah. Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
Where the Redstone Arsenal is. It's basically, Huntsville is basically Washington, D.C., Silicon Valley.
Okay.
Or the Pentagon's Silicon Valley.
Wow. Yeah. That's incredible. A lot of black box stuff, I'm sure, going on and things that you can't talk about. But the point is, all of this connects to today's virtual reality and blockchain technology, which the foundation of crypto and AI and all this kind of stuff. So talk about
I'll tell you the story about how that all came about through. So I decided I wanted to get a faster learning curve in visual effects. And so I went in and worked with commercials, which had roughly a 6 to 8 week turnaround versus a 1 to 2 year turnaround for film. And it cut my teeth. I felt a lot faster and worked with a lot of great directors that did commercials. David Fincher, so feature film directors, and then like the notorious Joe Pitcock. But the point here was that we were constantly challenged with, they wanted always to do something brand new. And so our standpoint, we were always having to look into the latest technology, whether it was fluid dynamics or high dynamic range, photoreal photography or photoreal cars. We were really at the forefront of making CG cars and making those look photoreal.
CG standing for computer generated.
That's right.
So I know
computer generated imaging, CGI.
Yeah, CGI. I remember CGI from my old production day.
Right.
Hey, everybody. Nick Anderson, CEO of One Accord. Thank you for listening in to today's episode of The Value Factory. I hope that you're getting value from this episode. Now listen, one of the primary ways that we support CEOs at One Accord is using Oasis, the One Accord system. It's our proprietary business operating system that's designed to shift your leadership team from reactive firefighting to focused execution. We provide the framework that will align your vision with your strategy, ensuring sustainable growth and clarity at every level of your organization. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or our bio and get connected with one of our senior leaders. And now back to the show.
So I was in this world where we were working with the latest beta technology with companies who wanted to collaborate with us because they knew that that would be great marketing in the business world. And we were also working a lot with NVIDIA cards. And a lot of people will say, well, that's a familiar name now. And it is. But NVIDIA, before they were the AI chip maker, they were a graphics card manufacturer.
So for gaming platforms and things like that.
For gaming and for both and for visual effects, because we used GPUs to compute and render all the high images, all the high end images that we had. And so they started with pretty pictures, basically, to give you real time gaming and photoreal imaging. And where that then went from visual effects to blockchain and AI, I had one day where I was working at Asylum Visual Effects and I was in the back room and we were changing out old NVIDIA cards for new NVIDIA cards. But the engineers back there had something else going on with the old NVIDIA cards. And so I was like, why are those cards going back into and all of them were deer in headlights. And so I said, hold that thought, get the rest of those in because we got to get our renders done before our clients come to view the commercial. Right. So, get back to them and I'm like, okay, we're going to lunch and you guys are going to explain what's going on here. Taking lunch, they think they're getting fired and I'm not getting fired. You're going to basically tell me what are you doing with those blades? And they're like, we're mining Bitcoin. And I was like,
what does that have to do with the production?
What is Bitcoin? It didn't have anything to do with production. This was
blockchain was really
exactly
known.
So, we worked in a field where we had highly creative people and highly technical people. It was the intersection of that, right? Art and media and technology. So everybody.
Sometimes art and science clashes.
Yeah, in this case, these guys decided that they wanted to mine Bitcoin. And my finance background came up again, bubbling up like, what is Bitcoin? So they explained it all to me. And then it was at that point where it was my aha moment where I was like, everything's been solved to where we can move value, the speed of sending an email, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's really where we want to go, right? We have the internet of information and we're transitioning into an internet of value. And we're right at that cusp right now.
Well, that's a perfect segue. So share with everybody, Mark, how that background and everything that you've done and learned, how is that working with AI today? How have you made the transition? And let's get into some
let's
AI
get into
advice.
let's get into the topic and finish up the background. So the other thing, of course, as I mentioned, NVIDIA was making graphics cards or GPUs, right? And eventually the speed by which they were processing those, they eventually got into making very high-end chips, fast chips, and then started to play in the area of artificial intelligence and started manufacturing their chips that we know today. And at that point, I was going from commercializing some technology in Huntsville because they knew that I was in Hollywood making pretty pictures. They too wanted to capitalize on that. So I moved and migrated my career more into commercialization of technology. And so I stepped into that world. And that world opened myself up to Silicon Valley as well. And in the early days with one particular technology group, advised the Apple phone team on facial recognition technology with camera sensor technology. And so I started to go deeper and deeper into more of the technical side, emerging technology side. And it was right around 2017, 2018, where AI started to come into play, but it was nowhere near where it is now today.
There was no agentic AI
There was no agentic AI.
years ago.
We were more really in that machine learning phase. But it still was in the process of training large language models, vast amounts of data. They were still in, it was almost like let's just say OpenAI, those companies, they were still, the turkey was still in the oven,
Right.
so to speak.
It's like building the plane while you're flying.
Yeah,
No, I get it.
exactly.
And I want to get into talking about, because not everyone is familiar with the difference between generative AI, which we know, like, from the agents, the bots like ChatGPT, and agentic, because it's like another level above. But for that, another comment I hear a lot from One Accord business owners is, should people, businesses, even corporations be concerned with AI replacing people? And I'm thinking of, the social media channels. I'm thinking of Amazon. It's like every other day, they're laying off 4 and 5 digits of staff.
So that we don't go down that rabbit hole too far, I'll leave you with some YouTube references.
Okay.
That really, two of the renowned AI experts recently had a conversation about where AI is going and how generative AI, where it's also going. And I think everybody is realizing to some degree that it's just not living up to the hype of what they expected it to do. But I think in layman's terms, the best way to describe it is everybody's using a prompt, whether it's ChatGPT or Grok, any of those, to ask questions to essentially is a language model. And what everybody's like, what's a language model? Language model is just basically a trained network that can then, with some intelligence, it's artificial intelligence, can go out and absorb vast amounts of data to train it. And then that way, when we go to prompt it, we as consumers want to ask it questions. We get these answers back in just lightning fast ways because it's learned the internet. And that part is where you're getting into questions about, you're pulling information out of the internet to help your business. Where agentic AI gets interesting, because what we just talked about was generative AI. Right. Getting into
require prompts.
Correct. And there's no doubt it can be efficient in helping your businesses. That's absolutely the case. But where agentic AI gets into play is where you essentially can train up your own business with your data. So you have what essentially is almost like an AI chief of staff that knows everything about your business. So you can start asking it questions that I think everybody wished a long time ago, if they could only ask their business a question, what that answer would be.
And now they can. Well, that's when we first met, you started talking about how is like a chief of staff.
Yeah.
Explain some of the other key differences. I mean, agentic, you're programming it, but it's not prompts. It can work.
It's learning.
It can
your data.
It can be automated.
Yes.
And actually take on tasks.
Absolutely. And not only can it take on tasks, it can next week's Thursday meeting with Bob, Jim, and Kelly.
Mike and Bob.
Bob as well. Mike and Bob are instructing it. So you can ask it to do those tasks and for it to go out and know who needs to be in that meeting, when to schedule it, when to generate that sales report, and who to give it to based on who's asking for it. So that's really like a task. But predictive is like if you ask it, instead of for the sales report, you could ask it, how can I improve sales this year better than last year?
Sure, because the sales report is a lagging indicator. It's like a report card is all based on something that already happened. But forecasting is about predicting what will happen.
Right.
And if you can ask your agentic AI chief of staff, what should we be focused on to increase sales by 13% in 2026? It can pull that analysis so that's actually beyond forecasting. Is it actually able to instruct you on how to achieve a certain performance level?
Well, first off, how that works is that I'm working and collaborating with people who've built agentic AI that essentially integrates with all of the business tools that most businesses work on and use, because we felt like there was a huge gap between what large enterprises have the luxury of using large language models, whether it's their own, or if they have the resource of using one of the big four tech and spending, millions of dollars to do that. They can. But we're talking, so they're driving a Ferrari, and we thought, why can't we just give small size businesses the Volkswagen? So it can still go to A to B, right? It might not go as fast as the Ferrari or be as comprehensive as the Ferrari. But now what you do is you add in we'll get into it in a little bit, but I'll talk a little bit more where edge computing then's like putting a turbo engine in your Passat, right? You got a Volkswagen Passat and you put a turbo, and you might be able to take the Ferrari, but you don't really, you're not competing with that guy anyways, right? You're not competing with the Ferraris and the F1. You're down here in, a stock car or whatever. But the way it works is, when I say business tools, I'm talking about everything from Salesforce to
Power BI,
Oracle, NetSuite, Power BI, any of that most of what you guys use is primarily those. Rarely is it proprietary that they make for themselves. Some mid-sized businesses do.
right?
But the whole idea was, let's integrate those into the overall AI layer that we've created as an agentic. And that way, when you start asking it questions, it can start to cross-pollinate all the data from all of those tools, right? So your sales aren't just specifically with your, let's say, your QuickBooks, but it also is related to your CRM. It's also related to your inventory. So
that's where the predictive analytics.
That's correct. And where
managing
generative AI basically stayed in one of those lanes, right? Maybe just in Salesforce, maybe just in QuickBooks, maybe just in Oracle NetSuite. But we were like, we need to put on top all the connective dots. So now you're looking at the total 360 of that question about your sales. And so you're getting a more thorough analysis and answer of predictive analysis that most large enterprises are able to do right now.
Right.
So there's ways and means to be able to accomplish putting a turbo in a Volkswagen and still getting A to B pretty fast. And the fast part is really where the edge compute.
Hello again, it's Nick Anderson. Thank you for tuning in to The Value Factory. I hope that you're getting value from this episode. Now listen, if your organization is facing a leadership gap, One Accord provides fractional and interim C-Suite executives. Now these are men and women who deliver immediate clarity and measurable results. Our seasoned leaders integrate quickly into your team to drive strategic initiatives and maintain momentum without the long-term overhead of a full-time hire. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, click the link in the show notes or the bio to get connected with one of our senior leaders. Now back to the Value Factory.
So I apologize, Mark. I asked you two questions at the same time to kind of close the loop on business owners' concerns about AI replacing people.
Oh, yeah.
In the context of the tech companies, social media, laying off some of them by the tens of thousands. Should there be a concern about people being replaced?
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me.
Well, and I'll tell you, I'm bouncing all over the place because it's a fascinating, I am just fascinated by the difference between generative and agentic. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But I have heard people say, and I'm interested on your take because you're a lot deeper into this than frankly anyone I've interviewed, is that AI will not replace people. People that use AI will replace people, which tells me that you really need to be savvy in how you leverage AI tools and agents.
Yeah, I think right now with that question, it's more perspective than perception. And what I mean by that is if you look at the perspective of where we are with AI, we're at the beginning of the game, right? We're like maybe at the, we're just ready to start playing ball. Everybody's just warmed up, right? We're in warm up. And really what you're seeing from a perspective standpoint is look at what Amazon is. It's a technology company, right? And it's invested an enormous amount of money into AI technology, right? And when you're working with when you're working with a technology company, employees, there's a likely probability that you are going to be replaced by the technology that you're creating. And within the engineering area and the engineering layers, that's really where a lot of the layoffs have happened. It's happened on a layer where engineers were there to really be facilitators with data and facilitators with how to manage large amounts of data and they can perform certain things with that data. But now we've got AI that does that.
Mhm.
So Amazon, I think, is going through that transition.
Well, sure. And publicly traded companies, they are, need to be responsive to their shareholders, and shareholders care about margins and profits and things like that. And when you can leverage technology and it seems to be picking up faster and faster, why wouldn't you do that? But what I'm hearing from you, Mark, is that it's not impacting every sector across the board.
It's not a perception issue. It's a perspective. You have to look at the perspective of where are the layoffs happening. The layoffs are happening a lot in tech companies, right? Well, the guys that are going out there and installing HVAC, they're not losing their jobs anytime soon. The trades are a huge need right now, in fact, because where is all this AI coming from? It's coming from infrastructure, and
Which requires building as facilities.
We need tradesmen like, plumbing, electrician. We need IT infrastructure, regular large scale construction, all of that. So there's a big sort of national shift where we are moving into the real need for tradesmen. And it's Mike Rowe. If you know Mike from Dirty Jobs and from Deadly.
Oh, he is great.
He's a big component of the trades.
Right.
And he's a great one to follow about their beat.
He's doing a lot of TV commercials. He's entered your space, but he's in front of the camera instead of in the back.
That's correct.
Where you were.
That's correct. Yeah.
So great. That's really good perspective. And what I'd like to do, because now we've got very different levels of understanding of AI in our audience. What I'd like to do, when we were talking about the primary differences between Gen AI and Agentic, could you share, Mark, to our audience, maybe just in one sentence, the key difference that a layperson would understand?
Yeah, sure. So generative is essentially you being able to ask. It's more task-based, right? A lot
It requires you to prompt it.
It requires you to give a very specific prompt to that, whether you're using Grok or Claude. So
did you notice that Claude bought a couple of Super Bowl commercials?
Yeah, I did see that.
Okay, at 8 million.
That guy was really good at.
No, didn't need to be. No. I'm sorry. I know
that's fine.
I'm a marketing nerd.
Yeah, well, I am too. I came from MarTech commercials, right? Discussing about the two definitions, right? Okay, so yeah,
I got you off track.
That's okay. Generative AI is more of it's task-based and it's prompt-based. So there's a lot of effort from the consumer to give it a specific of questions or specific, very detailed prompts to get the best results back.
Right? Do you know how I've learned to do better in my prompts using generative AI? I use generative AI. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I put my prompt in. I said, how can I improve this for better output? And what I get back is so much better than I wrote. And then I've done A/B testing where I'll do my just organic prompt and then look at the output. And then I will have AI improve my prompt and the output is measurably better. So to our audience, generative AI, ChatGPT, Claude, Grok, Gemini, Copilot, everybody's got their own brand. I think they're all owned by different companies.
Very much.
But doesn't X have one?
X is Grok.
X is Grok.
Yeah,
of course.
Gemini is Google.
Right. And Copilot,
Microsoft
Microsoft.
is Microsoft. Yeah.
And
That's OpenAI.
Yeah.
Which then gets rolled into Microsoft.
yeah,
as
it just
well.
means it's open source code.
It-
So people, it's like a WordPress website. You can.
Right. Right. Exactly.
So let's
Jumping back to agentic, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
getting into the key difference with agentic, because I know enough to be dangerous, but I know it is another level above.
It is. It's the next sort of step where you've already got essentially a pre-trained AI agent, and it has very specific expertise in certain areas. And then you can also have one that's more of a utility, that's got more of a utility play if we're thinking of like working within a business environment, right?
Mm-hmm. Can you give an example of a utility play?
Yeah. So let's say you're talking about on the human level, you're talking about more of like an office manager or operations,
Mhm.
general operations. So now with general operations, you've got to know a wide variety of all the different that you're working with. You've got your
What they do, how
they all cross
what the
together,
interdependencies are.
all the coordination, right?
Right.
All the coordination. That's really what a utility does, right?
Okay.
Then you've
Great
got the
example.
experts that are the ones that are experts like in sales or experts in human resources, those type of agents. What the chief of staff does,
Which is the agentic.
agentic,
I
and
love
this
that
is
you do that.
this is all agentic, right? Because agentic is only as good as the agents that it's orchestrating. Think of an AI chief of staff almost like a composer, right? That's orchestrating his entire orchestra, and he's doing music.
All of the musicians.
Right. It's
Yeah.
just like a business. CEO's up there or the chief of staff is up there getting all the different departments, whether it's getting the brass or the strings, putting that all together, and all that together makes music, right?
Mhm.
And so for the chief of staff in an agentic world, that is orchestrating all the different business tools, and each business tool, as I was saying earlier, hits a different department. So you've got a CRM that's really like your marketing side. Then you've got your inventory side, or not just inventory, but also accounting through NetSuite. And then you have other tools that are more based like on predictive. So that could be almost like somebody who's a C-suite executive, right? That has the skill to put all that information together and create a strategy. Much like, and then you have like behavioral. You've got a marketer who's out there and can see the behavioral of the market or the trends in the market. So there's a business tool called Sigma that does that, right? It will track your customer behavior. But now when you have this top layer, it's getting all that information, not just literally getting the information and pulling that information from all the different tools and the agents and assistants that are working in those particular departments, right? As virtual assistants. It's compiling it all together. And that's where the C-suite can start asking the questions that it needs. In fact, it was just recent that Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, he had come back from, I think it was in Davos, where he said he was just starting to play with Coinbase's agentic. So he can start saying, hey, I heard a rumor there was an issue in the sales department. Can you confirm whether or not, there's some confrontation happening in the sales department? And it'll come back to you based on email correspondence.
And it'll say, Bob is your problem.
It'll, I don't know how specific it's into it, but yeah, it could be Bob's your problem, definitely. But it can consume that data very quickly and it can compile it, but it's orchestrating it from all the other AI assistants, and it's looking at all the traffic that's going across your host of data. So that leads to sort of the next level in question is, where's all that data? Where's all that data stored, data retrieved, and
how is it protected?
How is it protected? Exactly. And that's going back, I think, to a question, I think you had mentioned it earlier, which is the security side and how small and mid-sized businesses are concerned. Because I look at a lot of the mid and small sized businesses back in the internet day, right? The internet heyday. And
90s, early 2000s.
right. And I think that what I'm kind of hearing is, hey, I kind of feel like I got sold a bill of goods with using like the Google Cloud or using a major technologies suite of services because now they own my data, right?
Right.
So between the truth of that and their perception of that, now part two of the Internet of Value is that you're now getting that same question that's coming up again, which is for AI, am I gonna make the same mistake twice and have my data in the cloud with a company that might or might not have the ability to harvest it and leverage it, right? Or will they have holes in security somehow and it's compromised by a third party?
Well, and I know that many social media companies do that to try to predict and build algorithms to just, continue their growth and evolution. So I want to bring this all around on exactly how I want to do a two-part question. How can the small business, right? These are not enterprise level businesses. How can our small and mid-sized business leaders who are watching us today, can you give us just a couple specific examples of both how they could or should be using generative AI and how they could and should be using agentic AI to provide, a competitive advantage? Because
absolutely. So this is where it gets interesting because now we're going to put it all together. As we said earlier, corporations, they have a lot of these tools at their ready, but it can take a very large infrastructure and money resource to manage that and operate it, which a lot of mid, small sized businesses don't have.
right.
However, and then with the agentic layer that would sit on top of their business is then orchestrating all of that information to give them very high quality predictive analysis that they would get from large corporations. Businesses can do that now today. We're very highly integrated AI stack or component that will literally sit on top of your business's data and all the business tools that are tied to that data. And we're now getting to the point where we can offer the ability for businesses to have what's called sovereign data. And that has to do with edge computing. And all edge computing really is it's bringing data closer to where the businesses exist. It could be edge computing on site. It could be edge computing through local or municipal or distributed servers that are within the city.
Right.
Or
even commercial server farms.
Correct. Or your own. Because if you're a small business, and if let's say you just have a rack already in the back that's running your business, you can then start to integrate some edge computing. And then what happens is there's very low latency with edge computing because it is not having to go out to the rest of the world.
It's like
to
being
find
an
where
intranet instead of an intranet.
That's correct.
Or internet.
Intra
versus inter.
That's a perfect example that those of you out there understand intranet. Intranet is just basically a network within your own company, let's say. If you can then harness both the AI layer, which is the agentic layer, and utilize the generative layer that you're using on a task by task basis in your company, it's a matter of, okay, how do you combine all that together? What's all that connective tissue? That's what we've developed because ours sits on, like I said, it sits on top and it connects and integrates with all your business tools on top. Biggest hurdle now you say is, okay, I've got this all put together, but all my data is up in the cloud. I've got it amongst the big four or what have, or wherever.
Sure.
So of course, now you're thinking, okay.
Big four, Microsoft, Google, this kind of thing.
Correct. You're using maybe a Google Workspace or you're using Microsoft 365.
Right.
Whatever that might be. Now you could still use those software services, right? But if you're looking to go into agentic AI, so you can do the predictive analysis there in your company, much like a corporate, you want to have that data
protected inside
And then that is essentially what's called sovereign data. Your data is your data, and your data, it's protected within some type of firewall that's based on how you set it up, not how Google sets it up or how Microsoft sets it up. You're able to set that up. And there's becoming more and more service-oriented IT that are starting to also be out there and available for edge computing. But that's really where my area and my ecosystem has expertise in, is being able to combine all those together, the agentic AI and the edge computing. But basically, in a nutshell, it becomes edge computing or edge AI, or edge and agentic AI.
And
a small business.
And I think, Mark, that more people in our audience, excuse me, they understand the generative tools. They understand Chat GPT. A lot of us have been using that since fall of 2022 when they, really got out there. We're using it to generate content. Of course, you've got to go through and edit the entire thing, make sure you get rid of any AI hallucinations, something that's not right. But I am also using it to produce graphics. I was asked to do a blog by a business broker here in the Puget Sound area, and the CEO gave me a specific topic. And so I researched it through AI and I got an outline, but then I put Andrew's voice in it. I made it mine. But at the end of that, I didn't, they took it, they posted the blog, they loved it, didn't change the thing. But then I thought, well, I can't send this through all of my channels because I did this specifically for this company. So what I did, and actually AI did all the work, is I put the article in there. It was 1,500 words. It was a good size blog post. And I said, I want to cut this up into 10 mini posts. And I would post one a day. Took me almost 2 weeks, and it cut everything up, and I had hardly any editing to do. And after I had done all that, I took all 10, put them together, plugged it back in, and I said, build me an infographic. I think I had to reprompt a couple of times, but the infographic was amazing.
It was great. Right?
Which was my last post. Now I'm sending this all through my LinkedIn. And every time I do the next thing, I see impressions, which is vanity, who cares? But engagement go up on each one. And then when I finally did the infographic, just absolutely blew up.
It went viral.
It really, I mean, people are emailing me this.
Yeah.
I have something to say. How the heck did you do this?
Yeah, that's the beauty of an algorithm when you play with it right.
Yeah. And I've learned to turn the learning off. So it's not learning everything from me, so I can keep my content private. There's actually a little button there.
Yeah.
I researched it. Do you know who told me where to find the button? AI. It's just silly.
Yeah.
Hello again, everybody. Nick Anderson, CEO of One Accord. And again, I hope you are getting value from today's episode. I want to tell you about One Accord's business enablement services. These are built to remove operational roadblocks and modernize the systems that are slowing your growth. Now, we work alongside you to turn internal complexity into operational clarity, ensuring that your business is fully prepared for its next chapter and future scale. To learn how One Accord can support your company today, the link in the show notes or our bio to get connected with one of our senior leaders. And now back to the show.
So what I'd like to do, so folks know about how to use generative AI because it's so much simpler. So how can a small to medium-sized business, in specific terms, maybe give a couple examples that you're aware of, leverage agentic AI?
Well, this is the beauty part, I think, because I say to businesses that go, okay, the next level, that sounds really complex. And it sounds daunting too, because now, we're in charge, there's a lot of other things in place to keep our data and be responsible with our data. And all I have to simply tell them, they're like, how do I do? Well, that's getting to a point where you don't know how. I usually say to people, you don't need to know AI. You just need to know what to ask your business. It's where it gets to the.
Oh, so that's probably the best way I've heard it explained yet. So you're really not thinking about prompting a Gen AI. You're thinking about, what about our business do we need to know? What's going to give us strategic insight to make decisions?
The composer and the orchestra together.
How do you bolt that on? I mean, with generative AI, we know that there's the 5 big tools out there. Are there specific tools that people can subscribe to that are agentic?
Well,
Or do you got to build it based on your business?
no, it's not. There are ways to do it. I mean, I'm not claiming that there's very specific ways. Microsoft, they all have agentic to some degree, but that's where mid and small size businesses, one, have to then go through and figure out how to configure their business in order to make it agentic. And a lot of times that's where it gets really tricky as far as all the siloed, where the silo game starts to play. And what I mean by that is, depending on what package you have from, let's say, a Copilot or from Google, they're requiring you then to put all your data in their cloud service, right? So
and that's what you want to avoid.
And that's where some businesses want to avoid that. I don't think all businesses want that, but I think what I'm really addressing is those businesses out there that are concerned with making, from a perception standpoint, making the same mistake they did with the internet boom, where they succumbed to Google and just said, we're going to use all these services. And you end up having to worry about it when something goes wrong. Right?
Especially if you're dealing with highly confidential information like, healthcare and HIPAA.
Yes.
I mean, that's
yes.
So anyone in our audience actually use their favorite generative AI agent to learn how they can incorporate or where they can go to add the layer of agentic on top.
So that's where we come into play, and other companies do. And what we do is we come in, and it's somewhat of like a set it and forget it, but it's more of a, you're going in and you're setting up based on the parameters of a business, the way that intelligence layer sits on top of it. And then as far as how all that data and where all that data sits, it's just a matter of plugging it in. And we've designed our agentic so that the whole philosophy was integrate everything. Integrate.
And who is we? I know it's you, but
it's me. And I work with, and we're developing the software, and I have a software that I provide on a subscription basis, where businesses could go in and subscribe for as low as $79 a month to as high as $6.99 a month, depending on how many integrations they want from their business, right, to be integrated into that layer,
getting into
agentic layer. This is where we're getting into agentic, because what ends up happening is you then have to essentially go through all your systems and your tools and go through the process of laying in new piping. And that piping is directly headed towards that agentic layer.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's and then within that piping, there are certain directions that are already pre-baked into the overall intelligence layer. And that's really where agentic gets really fun, because you can integrate any of the generative AI, especially with our software. You can generate.
That's a lot easier.
It is, because then what we find is that everybody can keep going and keep doing what they're doing, because we are not disrupting the business atmosphere of what they've already created. All we have to do is go in and integrate that agentic piece, and then it orchestrates with all the generative AI.
Another thought just occurred to me based on everything that I'm learning. And this is complex and it's Latin to some folks, not so much the generative, but when you are talking about generative, I love your chief of staff analogy. Would a good way of kind of couching that be that they literally would be bolting it on top of their generative? So with that, would you mind sharing with our audience how they can connect with you? There may be some folks that have some questions that go, wow, I'm using generative AI. I'm using it daily, but I would like to have the chief of staff. I'd be able to like to tell my agentic chief of staff to pull the sales records and do some data analytics.
Yep.
And that kind of a thing. What's the best way to get a hold of you, Mark?
This way is my email.
Share it.
My company is SMS AI Solutions. Sam, Mary, Sam, AI Solutions. So you can reach me at mark@smsaisolutions.com.
And that Mark is with a K, not a C.
With a K, correct.
Mike has a K in it too, by the way.
That's right.
I'm just getting way too feisty here.
It's all good. It's getting spicy in here. And then they can also go, our software is called Future Assistant. That's the brand, is Future Assistant.
Okay.
So it could be your future assistant. And because we started in the assistant side, but you can go to smsfutureassistant.ai. That's sms.futureassistant.ai.
So assistant is not plural.
No, it's assistant. So
Perfect.
Future Assistant.
Well, that is great. We're going to have to bring you back. I mean, this is such a broad and complex conversation, especially when you're getting into, which I think what we're trying to do, and companies like yours, is really trying to demystify that.
Yeah, we're there to basically help any mid to small size business sort of take all those perceptions away and look at it from a perspective and show you how easily it can be set up, a few short days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, Mark Kurtz, we are going to have you back. We'll get that figured out, but thank you. Thank you for very effectively explaining the difference between Gen AI, Generative, and Agentic. I learned a lot, and I just really appreciate your perspective, and now people know how to get a hold of you if they'd like to chat. So wrapping up this fantastic episode of Value Factory, I am your host, Andrew Ballard, thanking our guest, Mark Kurtz. And we ask you to subscribe if you haven't already, and have a great week. Let's grow. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks, Andrew.